So we chopping it up, and the whole conversation is, I loved you. I could have saved you.
What's good, RIZZLE fam? You know, the 90s were a pretty wild time if you were a hungry hip-hop artist, searching for your own piece of the bread. Making your name echo in the rap game required some serious guts and talent, especially in a time when there was no social media going around. And one of the people who managed to not only build a music career but to make it last, too, was Snoop Dogg. However, it didn't happen without stepping on some toes and having some major beefs, especially the one that he had rap's world's most dangerous man. But what really happened between them? After years and years, Snoop Dogg is finally speaking on why Suge Knight really came for him. So for those of y'all who ain't know, Snoop Dogg started his career with Death Row Records, one of the most famous record labels of all time. There were some legendary albums made under the name of Death Row: Dr. Dre's The Chronic, Snoop Dogg's Doggy Style, Tupac's All Eyes on Me, and plenty of others. And the person who managed Death Row at the time was none other than Suge Knight. Suge was one of the most feared people in the history of hip-hop as a movement. Even though he was a man who put on artists such as Tupac, Dr. Dre, and Snoop, he was also a feared persona and a menace to society. It's no secret that Suge used violence in order to reach the goals he wanted. It was his way of doing business. However, Death Row artists had their fair share of trouble, and they were not to be messed with either. One of the people who applied pressure and came about as a problem for Suge Knight was old Snoop. The trouble between Snoop and Suge pretty much started after Snoop's court case back in 1996, which caused him to have a change of heart. You see, Snoop Dogg and his former bodyguard McKinley Lee were freed of murder and assault charges of a rival gang member. Snoop found this as an opportunity to change his ways, and the first step he had to take was to leave old Death Row Records. One of his best friends and collaborators, Dr. Dre, was of a similar opinion. The label was not treating them the way that they had hoped, plus the label was getting a pretty bad rep because of all the things that Suge Knight was doing. At the time, Suge was piling up criminal charges left and right, giving out life threats, squeezing folks for their money on the streets, and much more. That was something that Snoop no longer wanted to be a part of. It was clear as day that Snoop no longer wanted to be involved in the gangsta life that Death Row implied once he started clearing out the air with Bad Boy Records. He wanted to wipe the slate clean, but Suge and his pals at Death Row, they had other plans. That's why as soon as his album The Dogfather was released, Snoop made up his mind. He's gonna leave Death Row and never look back. His decision was set in stone even further after Dre left Death Row and Tupac passed. He had nothing keeping him here anymore. On the night of September 7, 1996, Tupac was gunned down in a drive-by shooting in Las Vegas. Tupac was in the car with Suge Knight when he got shot 4 times in the chest, arm, and thigh. 6 days later, he's pronounced dead. Even though Snoop and Pac weren't seeing eye to eye due to all the problems that emerged with Death Row, Pac's death still left a huge mark on Snoop, making him go through a depression. His death changed Snoop forever, and it made him realize just how painstaking gangsta life can be. Not to mention, Suge was keeping all the bags that Snoop and others had been making for the label. Artists at Death Row, including Snoop, were paid according to Suge's will and how much he thought that the person deserved. But it wasn't as simple as just signing a piece of paper and leaving the office. There was more to the whole story. See, Suge Knight was involved in getting Snoop acquitted. Everyone knows that he pulled some strings in order to free him, and that came with a huge price. Snoop knew that if he left Death Row, it wasn't going to come out some serious consequences. But he took his chances. After Suge Knight was arrested for violating his parole and got sent to prison for 9 years, Snoop turned the page and decided to go with Master P's No Limit Records. He signed a deal that would completely change his life. Soon as Snoop changed teams, there were rumors of death threats coming his way. In one interview, Snoop was asked if he felt threatened by Suge Knight or if he was worried. He said,
Why, you worried for me?
Yeah, kind of.
Why?
Well, you know, some people say he's not really a nice man.
I was working against the devil, and through the grace of God, Master P and Priority Records, put a deal together which was, suitable for Mr. Knight.
Even though he was behind bars at the time, Suge still found a way to state his opinion on the fact that Snoop left Death Row.
Snoop should be happy that I didn't stand in his way to try to move on to spread his motherfucking wings. If it wasn't for Suge Knight, he would still be in somebody's cell making dinner, washing clothes.
Then Snoop Dogg made his legendary statement that will forever be remembered. He told Suge Knight,
Suge Knight recently said he used to be a superstar and now he's just a no-limit soldier. What do you say to that?
Nothing. He used to be a CEO, now he's just an inmate.
People paid homage to Snoop for his comment, and they couldn't hold back their comments. One person said, whether you love or hate Snoop Dogg, you gotta admit that it was a great comeback. And another one was right up there with it, nothing but a G thing. The beef between Suge and Snoop was brewing steadily. Snoop was finally ready to tell the world about his resentment towards Suge on wax, too. he made a diss track, Pimp Slapped, where he rapped, "This dude's a bitch like his wife, Suge Knight's a bitch, and that's all my life. And I'ma tell the whole world, see, cause you f***ed up the industry, and that's on me." But Suge got out of jail and started picking up the remaining pieces of Death Row, trying to somehow fix what was almost completely shattered. He wasn't ready to go down quietly, and everyone knew it. The first time that Suge and Snoop met after Suge got out the joint was at the infamous Vibe Awards in 2004, when Dre got smacked. According to a few sources, Suge was not even supposed to be there. However, not only did he show up to the party, but it was also said that he orchestrated the whole attack on Dre. His goons went after Dre as he was about to receive his award, and all hell broke loose from there. But Snoop and Suge both got out of that award show without a scratch. This was not the last time that they would meet. Sometime later in 2018, the two met again, but this time in Las Vegas. Snoop and his entourage were going through Vegas, and they were just so happened to find Mr. Suge Knight. Believe it or not, Snoop found this to be a pretty good opportunity to squash some beef. And this is how the conversation between them started.
When I finish with this little woo-wop I'm with, I'm gonna have my folks come down there and tell you what room I'm in. And then when you come up to my room, there ain't gonna be nobody in there. Just me and you.
And the meeting did take place some 45 minutes later. The tension was still hella high, even though Snoop promised that nothing was gonna happen and that none of his guys would pose a threat to Suge. Once Suge entered Snoop's room, this is how it went down.
So we chopping it up, and the whole conversation is, I loved you. I could have saved you. I had nothing but love for you. And his conversation was, I love you. I ain't got nothing but love for you. Why did you try to get me popped when you loved me? You know what? I forgive you. I ain't gonna do nothing to you. This nigga side that wants your head right now. I ain't gonna do nothing to you. You can go and walk up out there and we're gonna be cool from this day forward.
They managed to squash the beef that they had for decades, and that left a lot of people wondering what if the hip-hop world would look like if more people did the same thing. It's so good to hear grown men sit down and squash their beef instead of promoting the agenda that the other man wants of us killing each other and being crabs in a barrel pulling each other down. That was big of both of them, squash that beef and not let go far left. However, there are those who are very aware that one can forgive, but that don't mean that he or she's gonna forget too. One comment wrote, "That's good to squash the beef, ain't no need to hold grudge on anybody, but you can always forgive, but don't forget." Snoop never denied the fact that even though he was somewhat of a monster, he did manage to build most of the prominent record labels that gave birth to some of the most successful rap tracks of all time. There's no way that anyone could take that away from him, and Snoop recognized that. Interestingly enough, Snoop bought the record label this year, and that is one way of paying homage not only to Suge Knight, but also to the roots of his music career. What are y'all thoughts on the complicated relationship between Snoop Dogg and Suge Knight? You think Snoop was right to forgive him even though he wanted to take his life in the past? Let us know what you think all about it in the comments section below. If you like this video, make sure to check this next one out. Be sure to click like and subscribe, and as always, remember to keep it RIZZLE.